Proud of her? There is something to the statement that the wind and waves still know her name. That even the winds and waves and everything in nature still recognize the divine wherever they are and whatever form they take. And so I invite you to step into that energy. I invite you to step into that global recognition of the divine quality that lives within each and every one of us, that is the very life in our bodies. There is no place where God is missing. God might be going by a different name. She might be undercover, a mole, as it were, ready to spring up and allow us to see her work, its work, whatever. And have you noticed that sometimes things happen that look unlike God? And you have to work really hard to be like, okay, I know that God is in this somehow. I'm not sure that I have the eyes to see it this week. So I only skimmed the news one day this week and saw that some stuff is going on out there that might be considered a little scary. That we have ramped up the fear in this country to the point where we're hurting each other with it and we're hurting ourselves with it. In this room is the power to calm that storm. In this room, if we will allow Spirit, the truth, ultimate peace to work through us, if we will share the energy of life itself with the rest of the world, that will calm this storm. And there's so many ways to do it. And step one is and will always be the recognition that God is all there is. God is all there is. God is all there is. So that thing that you've been beating yourself up for this morning, maybe you got a zit where you weren't wanting one. Maybe last night you lost your temper. Or once again you drank coffee after 1 o'clock in the afternoon and so you didn't sleep last night. Maybe you're feeling bad because you didn't reach out to that neighbor you know needs help. Or maybe you're feeling bad because you did when you know you don't have any more time to give. God is all there is in you. Now that energy, that intelligence might have gotten twisted up a bit because it gets twisted by our fear and our judgment. But what we call good and bad is simply our judgment of the physical world. It's not the truth at the level of spirit, which we try really hard to pretend is different, right? Has anyone noticed that, well, I'm being spiritual right now. This is Reverend Kathleen is in the house, and I'm now going to say something wise and wonderful, which if I'm lucky, I will remember to just shut up then. Silence is golden. But over here, I'm being just me. And so I'm doing my bills, and I'm cleaning the bathroom, and I'm, popping dinner. Who knows? Popping dinner. It's fast food. 1 minute, 40 seconds, plus another 15 for the extra butter. Oh, like you didn't know that recipe. It's all God. Every breath you take, every heartbeat you have is a spiritual practice. Every time you take a deep breath in, you are breathing in, and the word for breath and the word for spirit come from the same place. And so when you breathe in, you're literally inspiring. There's no way for you to be separate from God. And so those things that we're busy beating ourselves up about, According to Emerson, what he says is good and bad are but names, very readily transferable to that or this. The only right is what is after my own constitution. The only wrong is what is against it. People used to ask Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of our philosophy, how they would know what God's will for them was. How would they know right from wrong? And his answer was always, you won't. You already do. Deep down in your gut, you know when you've strayed from your path because you feel icky. Or you can't afford to look at how you feel, and so if you're like me, and I'm sure no one here is, but you might know someone who is, you take off into one of your addictions, whether it's sugar or alcohol or reading, because I would much rather live where there are dragons than where my food addiction can get me. Yes? So we have to be open to what is. And we have a great holiday coming up which allows that. So when you open the door to all of those cute little goblins and Avengers and superheroes and Ninja Turtles, I want you to practice not slamming it in their face because they have on the wrong costume. You think you can do that? Really? I'm hearing a terrifying silence right now and remembering all of my training in child psychology and trauma dealing with. Trauma dealing with? I'm sure that's not the real name of it. When those people come in, when those people show up at your door, we offer them candy, right? What if every part of you was coming to you in its costume of envy or gratitude or laziness? What if all the parts of you were showing up in all of their masks and standing in front of you and saying trick or treat? And the divine within you always, always, always responds with the treat. Honestly, I've never slammed the door in some kid's face. I'm willing to bet neither have you. Yeah? Okay, I'm a little less scared of y'all now. But that was still kind of like, yeah, sure, I've never done that. The divine is showing up in each and every one of those kids on Wednesday. And if none of the kids show up, the divine still showed up. I avoid my own front door like the plague, because if I buy all that candy, there won't be any left by Wednesday night. So I hide from it. We also have Dia de los Muertos. Muertas? Se me olvidó. Whatever, the Day of the Dead, that is being celebrated by our Hispanic neighbors. And some of us, actually, the kids used to celebrate it every year here. Now, for some people, that is a night in which they get visited by their loved ones. And there's old tradition. Samhain is an old Wiccan pagan tradition that says the veil is thin and we can communicate with the other side best on that night. So in all of these traditions, we acknowledge that there is another side, that there are other beings that we can't see, that there is something greater than ourselves and greater than this one human life. And we get in touch with that. And for many people, that is a beautiful, sacred, loving time in which they get to celebrate and tell their stories of their families and the people who have gone on before them. Now, if you present me with a ghost, I'm going to have a different reaction. And I know this because I proved it. I had a family member who could see ghosts and it was no big deal to her. And I was always so jealous because I thought that was so cool. And she'd go on these ghost walks and all of a sudden her phone wouldn't work and so she didn't have a camera and it would start working again as soon as she got back in the car. Or, she would get pushed in a certain direction, or she actually got a kid in the basement to stop crying, because apparently that's where he got put when he was being punished. So she convinced the people who owned the house to put a light down there, and he was fine. He was just scared of the dark. A kid that nobody else could see. I thought that was so cool. I wanted to be like her if I grew up. So one day, she took me on a ghost walk. And we were in Old Town San Diego, which is one of the most haunted places, like, anywhere. And I was ready. I had my camera. And I'm looking at the graveyard, and it's dark, and there's trees with things hanging from them. And I step into the graveyard, and I'm thinking, someone in the back of my head said, none of you have anything to say to any of us. Shut up. Apparently it was me not actually wanting to meet the ghosties. So we can call ghosties good, we can call them bad. I've had other experiences where a family member came through for me, or at least I believe that, and I sensed them and was very comforted by it. But we get to decide. It's the same thing, right? Whether I'm deluding myself or it's something real, define real, it's the same thing happening. It's just there is neither good nor bad, but thinking makes it so. Thank you, Billy the Bard. Shakespeare to those who are not friends. We do the same thing within ourselves. Ernest Holmes wrote, "Sit down with yourself, for there is a self within you that is real. No one can ever enter here but yourself, for it is you. Say, perfect within me, just as though you were talking to a person. Or, my peace within me, which is perfect, comes forth and expresses through me." And so no matter how you've been judging yourself, I invite you to consider allowing that self to have its say, getting quiet, going into what some people call meditation, but just getting settled enough and quiet enough in yourself to hear who you really are and what you really have to say to yourself. And how does spirit in you want to show up through you? Now, that's the second part of courting the divine presence. Have you ever... Well, we'll do this experiment one more time because I know you've done it before. Take a deep breath in. Okay, somebody broke. I never said take a deep breath out. If all we do is bring in or allow to rise up within us that divine presence, and we never breathe it out into the world, we get pretty darn uncomfortable pretty darn quickly. When we look at the natural world, we see places where flow is the law. And so we call that the law of circulation. As good comes up for us, as good comes into our lives, if we don't share it, and I don't mean go knock on somebody's door and evangelize to them. I mean, allow your light to shine out into the world. I mean, let the divine love that is within you flow through you. That's actually, in my opinion, how we experience it. We don't actually feel it unless it's flowing. So there is a power in that law of circulation. And you can't just take in air and never breathe out. Think about what happens during hurricanes, when the wind and waves know his name and are all coming to party in your town, and apparently on your street, and the waters are rising. If all of that water comes in and never goes back out, we generally think of that as a bad thing called flooding, right? We've had some hurricanes lately, and that's an overabundance of energy coming up our coast and bringing a lot of water and wind with it. And many people see that as a big, scary deal. Now, I know if you go to Louisiana, they have something called hurricane parties. And for them, it's just another reason to party, like they need another reason to party. These people are fun. I'm just warning you. When I was a kid, I thought hurricanes were awesome. We were living on, our base housing wasn't ready yet, so they put us on a trailer on the beach just in time for the hurricane. And we were all like this, and my poor mother made it look like nothing was going on. Yeah, it's raining, sweetie. We'll stay inside today. You can watch Daniel Boone all day long. I thought I loved hurricanes after that. You get to watch TV for more than an hour? We only got an hour. Meanwhile, my mother's trying to sit where we can't see her going, wah! We get to decide whether something's good or bad. We get to decide if we're going to allow our good to flow through us, because if we can suspend judgment, it flows more easily. The energy of life flows more easily. And if we are not willing to let it take an active part in our lives, then what's the point? It's all very well and good that God is all there is. That's been true since the beginning of time. But if we don't act as if we know that, we're going to continue hurting each other. We're going to continue making the other person bad or wrong, or making ourselves bad or wrong. If God is all there is, and we really believe that, then we have to live from it. Not in order to be good people, but because we live from what we believe to be true of the world, yes? I believe in the law of gravity. Now, it doesn't need me to, but because I know about it and I work within that law, I don't step off the top of buildings. One hopes that neither do you. And so this is how the power of the Christ in you, your Buddha nature, can actually work. It has to work through you. Again, Ernest Holmes wrote, "Here is the difference between a dreamer and the practical person. The dreamer is always floating around in the clouds. The practical people keep their thoughts in the clouds and their feet on the earth. In this way, they bring heaven to earth through themselves." The practical people keep their thoughts in the clouds and their feet on the earth. In this way, they bring heaven to earth through themselves. We must be willing to have spirit flow through us in order to create a world that works for everyone. And I don't mean must as in order to be good people. I mean, if we want the world that works for everyone, this is what we must do. If you want to build a house, if you want to live in a house, you must allow a foundation to be built. It's that kind of must. And often what I observe is that we're so busy judging as good or bad those different parts of us that are really all God, that we spend our time doing that rather than allowing spirit to flow through us and out into the world. If you're anything like me, sometimes you do that because you don't want to have to go out into the world and let spirit flow, because it can be a little scary. Am I the only one? It's so much easier to just sit and be all judgy than to go out and do those things I know I should be doing. 3 or 4 times this week alone, the words of St. Paul, who, believe me, I do not search out, have been put in front of me. And those words are, those things that I would do, I don't do. And those things that I hate, I do. And he's expressing his own human frustration with, I know I'm supposed to be doing this. I actually want to do this. I would like to know that this is what I do. And instead, I look up and I'm over here, where I didn't mean to be and I swore I'd never go back to. Anyone who has ever had a hangover has had this thought. And so I invite you to join me in trusting that spirit is good, and as it flows through me, it must do good. And that as I allow it to flow through me, I am taken care of. I am supplied and sourced with all good things. One of the things we did on our retreat this weekend was look at how was it we wanted to show up in the world? What were we committed to? And my commitment, which I share with you, and I committed to the practitioners, is that this is my truth. I see and serve the Christ in the world as it is now. And I am firm in principle and flexible in form. Spirit gets to flow through me however it wants to. And I'm just committed to allowing that to happen. And this seems to be a good time to take that into prayer. And so as Spirit flows through all of us, which is why I pray from down here, I invite you to just simply sink into your body and remember that that too is the divine. Allow yourself to be fully present. And the beautiful part of that is that as we are fully present, as we are surrendered to this infinite good, we are all awake and aware to it. We don't have to bring Spirit in anywhere. Spirit is already here. And it is the truth of who we really are. The divine truth is peace. The divine truth is power. And the divine truth is absolutely the love that exists between and within all souls. It is our Christed consciousness that is fully awake and shared amongst us right in this moment. There is nowhere else to be, nothing else to do, nothing else to be. In this moment, we are of the one mind, and I call our attention to it. And that is how we pray. God, being all that there is, now lives fully as each and every one of us right now. Now expresses itself fully in the world, and where the divine is, where that love is, all fear is cast out. And so peace breaks out everywhere. Love is shown everywhere. And those who thought they were enemies awaken to the truth that they are one and that there is love between them. I celebrate that this is the intrinsic, inherent truth of what we are. And as we simply relax, it happens naturally. Spirit expresses itself through us naturally when we stop fighting it. I'm so grateful that this is how Spirit works. That we allow, and Spirit is in the world. And from this place of gratitude, I release this word to the law of cause and effect, which has already said yes, and is already bringing it into form, that we may stand witness to it in form. I call it all good and very good, and so it is.